much to the president of the college. Thank you very much for giving to us the chance to use in this ambulances, this Zoom, all the places you actually giving to us for making this use. But it's not easy to say we are going to making these things happen. Also, we have to mention to the Suque Pueblo for the effort they put in the organization of this event, because we working, I would say we working sometimes 14 hours a day. We trying to do things to making our community, our pueblo, sustainable and independent in the community. But actually in these times we are already finishing to building the seed bank, because we believe in the seeds, our brothers and sisters, they are over here. They can be the elements they can support our life, because in Indian ways we say, if you have seeds, you can survive. The lieutenant was mentioned this kind of the situation and dimension of the importance of the seeds. But anyway, not only seeds is our element in life. Not only seeds is our brothers and sisters. I want to present to Oscar Olivera, a man he was, since he was a little boy. Actually, he was born in Oruro, Bolivia. He was almost 10,000 feet of the elevation. In this area, I saw myself, it's growing the best quinoa in the world. However, the plant geneticists or the plant specialists, they can try to making a lot of science. I would say in this time, it's no more high than Indian science they can be in this planet. Because for a number of the years I was working with the quinoa, I have the specialty in plant genetics, but I didn't have the possibility to arrive to the quinoa, the Indian people, they grow in the south part of my country, where it's only 4 inches of the rain of the precipitation. But anyway, now this gentleman, Oscar Olivera, is living in Cochabamba, and all his life he was a factory worker. He works in the factory of the shoes in Cochabamba, they call Manaco. It was a very big industry of the shoes. Since of the 2000 year, coming the situation of the Indian people or the people in my country, they beginning to tolerate the imposition of the diptel, this big water corporation. They want to control and privatize the water in my country. In this time, the people, they go to streets and fighting against this kind of the situation and defend the rights for the water rights. In this time, they killing almost 3 to 5 people in my country, in Cochabamba, Bolivia. It's very, very historical thing in this time. I would like to introduce the gentleman, Oscar Olivera. He take part of the big part of this movement of the people in Bolivia and throw out and kick out from Bolivia this big corporation, diptel. Oscar.
Muy buenos días, hermanas y hermanos.
Good morning, brothers and sisters.
Primeramente quiero agradecer a Emigdio, a Lorín, al colegio, al college, por haberme permitido estar aquí hoy.
Above all, I'd like to thank Lorraine and Emigdio and also this college for having invited me to be here today.
Yo tengo una gran suerte de poder estar en espacios como este, donde podemos comunicarnos de manera directa con la gente.
I've been blessed with the great fortune of finding myself in places like these where we can directly communicate with people.
Y quiero agradecer a mi pueblo, que es en realidad el que ha hecho la historia que muy brevemente ha contado Emigdio.
Also, I want to express my appreciation for my people, my community, which has marked and made history, as Emigdio has briefly stated.
Yo vivo en Cochabamba, que es un lugar muy agradable, casi como este lugar aquí en Nuevo México.
I live in Cochabamba, Bolivia. It's a very, very pleasant place, almost as pleasant as the Espanola Valley here in New Mexico.
Es un lugar muy alegre, es un lugar que produce absolutamente todo.
It is a very happy, joyous place where you can produce practically anything.
Es un lugar donde la gente es muy generosa.
It is a place where people are very generous.
Y mucha gente de otras partes de Bolivia y del mundo se van a vivir a Cochabamba.
And many people from various parts of Bolivia, but also from throughout the world, have gone to live in Cochabamba.
Porque es un lugar, como digo, muy benigno, bendecido por la Pachamama, por la Madre Tierra.
Because as I have stated, it's a very benevolent place, and it enjoys the blessings of Pachamama, our Mother Earth.
Pero en Cochabamba hay un problema muy grave desde hace más de 50 años.
But Cochabamba has been afflicted by a very serious problem for at least the last 50 years.
Es que hay poca agua.
There's very little water.
El agua está en las montañas y no sabemos cómo podemos traer esas aguas benditas de las montañas hacia la ciudad y el campo.
The water is concentrated in the mountains, and we've been challenged with the problem of having to transport the water from the mountains into the countryside and also into the city.
En 1999, el Banco Mundial y el gobierno de aquel entonces pensaron que la solución a este problema era la privatización del agua.
In 1999, the then government thought that the solution to this problem would be the privatization of water.
Y se adjudicó la privatización del agua en Cochabamba a una empresa que hoy yo me encuentro que también está aquí, la empresa Bechtel.
It was both the government and the banks that proposed a solution, and it was the privatization that would be given over to a company that also is present here in this part of the world.
Esta privatización básicamente consistía en una elevación brutal de las tarifas por el servicio de agua en Cochabamba.
The repercussion of the privatization was the raising of the water rates in the city of Cochabamba, a drastic raising of the rates.
Cada familia en Cochabamba debía pagar por el servicio de agua una quinta parte de sus ingresos familiares.
Each family in Cochabamba needed to pay out 1/5 of its income for water alone.
Es decir, una familia cuyos ingresos eran aproximadamente de $300, cada familia debía pagar $60 por el servicio de agua.
In other words, if a family earned around $300, it would have to pay out the equivalent of $60 for water bills per month.
La gente debía decidir entre comer o pagar por el servicio del agua.
And people were forced to decide between eating or paying for water.
En Bolivia, desde 1985, donde hubieron cambios muy drásticos en la economía del país,
In Bolivia, beginning 1985, when very drastic changes began to occur in the country,
y por una tradición cultural, el agua se gestiona de manera comunitaria.
and due to a long-standing tradition, water was dealt with along community traditions. It was partitioned because or through community traditions.
2/3 partes del agua en Bolivia se distribuyen de manera comunitaria, es decir, son las comunidades las que captan el agua, las que distribuyen el agua de manera equitativa.
2/3 of all water in Bolivia is distributed but also harvested in community traditions. Communities become responsible for the water distribution.
La privatización significaba la desaparición de estas formas comunitarias de gestión del agua.
The privatization required the disappearance and the extinction of these communal, collective ways of distributing water.
Y gestionar el agua de manera comunitaria es gestionar la vida misma.
When you deal with water, you are dealing directly with life.
No se puede gestionar la vida si es que no existe agua.
One cannot manage life if water does not exist.
Es decir, la privatización significaba la desaparición de formas de vida comunitarias.
Privatization would have meant the disappearance of communal, collective ways of living.
Y comunidad es absolutamente contrario a al individualismo, lo comunitario.
And community is at variance, it's completely opposite of individualism.
Una forma de vida comunitaria tiene que ver con valores muy profundos.
A community and collective way of life has very deep values at its heart,
Como el respeto, la solidaridad, la reciprocidad,
values such as respect, reciprocity,
la convivencia social y la convivencia equilibrada y armónica con la madre naturaleza,
values such as harmony with Mother Nature.
y la gente no estaba dispuesta a que estas formas de vida, estas formas de relacionamiento con la madre tierra puedan desaparecer.
And the people were not in agreement that these deeply rooted ways of relating to the world and to Mother Earth and to each other should disappear.
Y una tercera consecuencia de la privatización del agua en Cochabamba era la creación de un mercado de aguas.
A third consequence of the privatization of water in Cochabamba would have been the creation of a marketplace for water.
Es decir, que todas las fuentes de agua, vale decir lagos, lagunas, ríos, pozos, podían ser puestas a la venta para cualquier inversionista.
In other words, every lake, every river, every well would or could be put onto the market for sale to be bought.
Es decir, de un día para otro, todas las comunidades que durante siglos se habían abastecido de una fuente de agua comunitaria, de un día para otro tenían que pedir o comprar el agua de un dueño privado.
Overnight, the communities that had used water and water sources since time immemorial would have had to ask permission for the use of water.
Esta privatización se dio básicamente por una ley y un contrato con Bechtel.
The privatization of water came about as a result of a particular law and also a particular contract that was formed with Bechtel.
En esta ley, de manera muy sutil, muy disimulada, se establecía que para poder acumular el agua de la lluvia había que pedir permiso al ministerio, al gobierno.
The law stated in a very subtle and very cloaked manner that people had to ask for permission to harvest water.
Es decir, que el agua de la lluvia también se privatizó.
Rainfall was also privatized.
La gente del campo y la ciudad no aceptó de ninguna manera esta forma criminal de privatización.
Under no circumstance did the people of Cochabamba accept the criminalization of this law that would limit the use of water.
La gente se organizó y formó una coalición muy horizontal, muy democrática, muy participativa, que se llamó la Coordinadora de Defensa del Agua y de la Vida.
The people then gathered and they formed a coalition. It was a very horizontal coalition. It was very democratic, and it was called the coordinadora. In the book by Oscar, it's also called A Coalition in Defense of Water and Life.
Y era una organización donde estaban todos los sectores sociales de la población, campesinos, citadinos, trabajadores, estudiantes, jóvenes, desocupados, mujeres.
Within this coalition, all sectors of the community were represented. Campesinos or farm workers, people from the city, workers, women, youth, and the unemployed.
Y se organizó básicamente para rechazar esta privatización, pero ante todo para reponer en la mesa de la sociedad misma la significación y la importancia del agua para la vida.
The coalition was formed to reject the privatization of water, but at the same time, it was also created to place in a center position of the table the old traditions around water use and regulation.
Para nosotros el agua no es un recurso natural.
For us, water is not defined as a natural resource.
El agua no es un recurso mineral.
It is not a mineral resource.
El agua, como dice nuestro hermano del pueblo de TASCL, es un ser vivo.
Water, in the words of our brother from TASCL, is a living being.
Y la gente de manera intuitiva salió a las calles y a los caminos para defender el agua.
And people, in a most intuitive manner, poured out into the streets to defend water.
Porque la privatización del agua no solamente nos quitaba un bien común de los seres humanos, de los animales, de las plantas, de las montañas, de la tierra misma,
Because the privatization of water would not only remove from us a common possession, a possession which the mountains enjoyed, but also the plants and every living being, animals, people.
sino ante todo destruía estos valores y estas formas comunitarias de vida que habíamos desarrollado durante siglos.
Not only would it have done that, but it would have destroyed the values that we had been practicing for centuries.
El agua es la sangre de la tierra, de la madre tierra.
Water is Mother Earth's blood.
El agua es como la sangre de nuestro cuerpo.
Water is akin to the blood running through our bodies.
Si se enferma o es escasa nuestra sangre, nuestro cuerpo, nos podemos morir.
We're able to die if we have too little blood, or if the blood in some way is not, or is compromised.
Por eso salimos de nuestras comunidades y de nuestras casas para defender el agua y para defender la vida.
It is for these reasons that we went out of our homes and out into the streets to defend water, but also to defend life.
Era una lucha por la vida contra la muerte.
Ours was a struggle for life and against death.
Era una lucha por un bien común contra la mercantilización del agua.
It was a struggle to safeguard a common good and against mercantilism.
Era una lucha por la comunidad contra lo individual.
It was a struggle against individualism and for collectivism.
Era una lucha de la gente humilde, sencilla y trabajadora contra estos grandes poderes como el Banco Mundial, Bechtel, el Ejército y la Policía.
It was a struggle on the part of humble, common people against the army, the banks, and the large corporations.
Pero luego de 5 meses de una pelea muy dura, muy digna, pero ante todo una lucha muy alegre, logramos expulsar a Bechtel de Cochabamba y logramos cambiar la ley.
After 5 months of a very arduous, difficult, but ultimately very joyous combat, we were able to expel Bechtel from our community, and moreover, we were successful in changing the law.
Fue una lucha muy importante.
It was an important struggle.
Esta lucha tuvo una significación humana muy profunda,
This struggle had a profound human significance
porque se demostró que un pueblo unido, que un pueblo organizado y un pueblo movilizado es capaz de derrotar enemigos muy poderosos.
It demonstrated the fact that a well-organized and a deeply committed populace could uproot a very powerful enemy.
Pero vencimos primeramente a dos enemigos internos que tenemos nosotros adentro de nosotros mismos.
But at the same time, we were successful in vanquishing two enemies that reside within our own beings.
Uno de nuestros enemigos es el miedo
One of these enemies is fear,
y el otro enemigo es el conformismo, la resignación, el individualismo de cada uno de nosotros.
and the other enemy that lives within us is conformity, individualism, apathy.
Y eso pudimos vencer mirándonos los unos a los otros como hermanos,
We were able to do this by looking into each other's eyes and seeing that there was a brother or a sister.
recuperando la confianza en nosotros mismos,
We did this by means of recovering our own self-confidence,
recuperando la confianza en mi hermano y en mi amigo, en mi compañero, en mi vecino.
We did this by recovering the confidence in my brother, my friend, my neighbor.
Y eso fue lo que hicimos.
That's exactly what happened.
Devolverle al pueblo la capacidad de decidir.
This struggle was able to return to the community something that it had lost, and it was its power of decision-making.
En el tema del agua, el año 2000 en Cochabamba, el pueblo tomó la decisión.
In the year 2000, the people recovered their decision-making capacity in Cochabamba.
Por eso muchos pueblos en el mundo, conociendo la historia de Cochabamba, se animaron a organizarse, se animaron a unirse y se animaron a luchar.
And that is why many communities throughout the world, having become familiar with the situation and the victory in Cochabamba, decided to organize and decided to become inspired by this struggle and to fight for their rights.
Y no conozco hoy día un lugar donde no hemos ido a apoyar estos procesos organizativos donde la gente haya perdido.
And I do not know of a single place where I have been to support these similar parallel struggles where people are organizing toward the same ends. I do not know of a single place where people have lost the battle.
Y esto es muy importante que sepamos.
And this is very important that we all know this.
Y es una casualidad que a los lugares donde yo visito para hablar, como ahora lo estoy haciendo con todos ustedes,
It is significant that in every place where I go to speak with people, such as here, right now, today,
siempre llueve.
it's significant that it always rains.
Y creo que la lluvia de hoy en la mañana, aquí en este territorio tan hermoso,
I believe that this morning's rainfall in this really beautiful land
es una bendición del cielo.
is a blessing from the sky.
Es una señal de esperanza para nuestro pueblo.
It signals hope for our community.
Y es que el agua va a limpiar nuestro cuerpo y nuestro espíritu.
It means that the water is going to purify our land, our body, and our spirit.
Y llenará poco a poco los cauces de nuestros ríos.
And it will also be regenerating the sources of our river.
y los ríos nos darán fuerza para luchar.
and the rivers will provide us strength for the struggle.
Esa es la señal de la lluvia hoy aquí en este territorio.
That is what the rainfall this morning means in this area.
Pero al mismo tiempo yo quiero contarles lo que está pasando a partir de México hacia la Argentina en nuestra América.
I would like to tell you what is occurring from Mexico southward toward Argentina.
12 años de aquella victoria importante en Cochabamba.
It's been 12 years since that important victory was obtained in Cochabamba.
Las luchas por el agua, por el territorio, continúan hoy.
The struggle for water and for land continue to this day.
Y son los pueblos indígenas que quizás de manera solitaria hoy siguen luchando por conservar su agua y su territorio.
And consistently, it is the indigenous communities, almost exclusively, that persist in their struggle for land and water.
Y pese a que en Sudamérica, como en Bolivia, en Ecuador, en Perú, en Uruguay, en Argentina, existen gobiernos progresistas,
Bear in mind that there are progressive governments in places such as Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, Argentina, and Uruguay.
la lucha es más difícil para los movimientos indígenas y populares.
In spite of their progressive governments, the struggle by Indian communities still remains very difficult.
Hoy, los poderosos del mundo han decidido que la minería es la matriz económica a nivel global.
Today, the powerful elite of the world have decided that mining is the heart of profitable industry in the world.
Y los gobiernos de nuestros países ya no son nuestros gobiernos.
And that has resulted in the situation that the governments in our countries are no longer our governments.
Y muchos gobiernos se han subordinado a esos grandes intereses que gobiernan el mundo hoy.
Many of the governments have subordinated themselves to these immensely powerful industries that run the world.
Las empresas mineras, principalmente canadienses y estadounidenses, están ocupando territorios en los campos.
The large industries or corporations of a mining nature from Canada and the United States particularly are occupying huge tracts of land in rural areas of Latin America.
En Guatemala, un pueblo indígena, cada día mueren líderes indígenas que están luchando por defender su territorio.
In Guatemala, as an example, every day indigenous leaders die. These are people who struggle to defend their territories.
En Chiapas, comunidades indígenas que están siendo expulsadas de sus territorios por paramilitares y militares que están entregando los mismos estos territorios a las transnacionales.
In Chiapas, many people are dying, and whole communities are being displaced by military and paramilitary forces that are turning over the land to the corporations.
En Colombia, un conflicto armado que se vive hace más de 50 años, donde los más perjudicados, las víctimas de esta guerra interna en Colombia, son las comunidades indígenas.
In Colombia, for over 50 years, people have been struggling against the corporations. And again, the victims, by and large, are indigenous communities.
Miles y miles de hermanos y hermanas indígenas en Colombia han muerto por esta guerra.
Thousands upon thousands of our indigenous brothers and sisters in Colombia have died in this war.
En el Ecuador hay varios dirigentes indígenas hoy en las cárceles por defender el agua.
In Ecuador, there are innumerable indigenous leaders who find themselves incarcerated.
En Bolivia, pueblos indígenas que hoy están peleando contra el gobierno de Evo Morales por la construcción de una carretera que va a destruir un territorio indígena.
Today, Bolivian indigenous communities are fighting against Evo Morales and his government because they have decided to create a large highway through their territories.
En Chile, los hermanos mapuches que están hace años en la cárcel por defender su tierra y que han sido puestos ahí como terroristas.
In Chile, the Mapuche Indian leaders have been also incarcerated because they have been labeled terrorists.
En Argentina, en la Patagonia, comunidades indígenas que están peleando contra la construcción de represas que va a afectar la vida de sus territorios.
In the Patagonia area of Argentina, there are there are Indian communities that are fighting against the construction of a dam on their territories.
Todo esto provocado por estos grandes intereses económicos y mineros en el mundo.
All of this has been provoked by the large mineral industries.
Pero hay un pueblo en Sudamérica que se ha parado firme y que ha puesto un alto a las transnacionales mineras.
But there is one community that has stood up in Latin America and that has said stop to the mining industries.
Es el pueblo del Perú.
And that is the people of Peru.
Es Cajamarca,
The place is called Cajamarca,
que ya está más de medio año peleando contra la instalación de una minera estadounidense Silver ahí en Cajamarca.
For
6 meses.
For 6 months, the people of Cajamarca have been fighting against a U.S. silver mining company.
Parece que la historia se repitiera como hace más de 500 años atrás.
Cajamarca seems to be reliving a 500-year-old history.
Y lo que está pasando en el mundo y particularmente en nuestra América nos recuerda esa historia de ocupación permanente de nuestros territorios.
What is occurring now in Latin America in our indigenous communities is reminiscent of what took place in the Americas 500 years ago with the conquest.
Entonces, y también nos recuerda que nuestros pueblos jamás se han arrodillado, que nuestros pueblos siempre han estado de pie para defender su tierra.
It is also reminiscent of the fact that our communities have never surrendered,
Y que nuestros pueblos no están dispuestos a vivir de manera permanente como esclavos.
and that our communities are not given to live in a permanent manner as slaves.
Porque hace más de 500 años la vida en nuestros pueblos era una vida comunitaria.
Before the 500-year event, our people were community-minded in every way.
Las montañas, las plantas, los animales, el agua, era de todos y era de nadie.
The mountains, the plants, the animals, and the water belonged to everyone, and at the same time, they belonged to no one.
Eran bienes comunes.
They were communal goods.
No había propiedad privada en nuestros territorios.
Private possession did not exist in our lands.
El gran desafío hoy para nuestros pueblos, para nuestras comunidades, para nosotros como personas,
The great challenge for us, for our communities, and for our people
es recuperar esa memoria histórica.
is to recover that ancestral memory.
¿Qué fuimos? ¿Qué somos? ¿Y qué queremos ser hoy?
Who were we? What do we want? And who do we want to be today?
Y que el agua, eso que nos trae hoy aquí a esta conferencia,
Water, the very thing that draws us to this conference,
no se vuelva una frontera como nos han impuesto, donde el río es la frontera.
ought not to become boundaries as the Rio Grande, for example, or other rivers have become boundaries between countries and peoples.
El agua, el río, debe ser un punto de encuentro entre las personas y las personas con la madre tierra.
On the contrary, water should be a touchstone for people and communities and a common bond.
Que el agua es como nuestro espejo,
Water should be like our mirror,
donde cada vez tenemos que vernos para preguntarle al agua si lo que estamos haciendo hoy está bien.
we should, on a constant basis, be looking deep into water and ask of water, are we living as we should?
Porque el agua es energía,
Because water is energy.
el agua también es sabiduría
Water also is wisdom,
y el agua es alegría.
and water is joy.
Por eso que la lucha de hoy de nuestros pueblos sea una lucha sabia,
Which is to say that the struggle of our people today should be a struggle with wisdom,
que sea una lucha de encuentro
and a struggle in which people meet each other.
y que sea una lucha alegre,
It also ought to be a struggle that is joyous,
porque el agua es encuentro, sabiduría y alegría.
because water is about meeting, it is about wisdom, and it is about joy.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar, for that really inspiring, those inspiring words. As you will refer to your schedule, you'll notice that we have scheduled a break for this time, and so I'm going to, in this case, because it's the first day and we're on schedule, allow you to have that break. I may not be so generous in the future, so please enjoy